Let's talk about where a more serious structure might be necessary, where fencing will do, or mowing the grass so that people can't be smuggled through the grass. That's something. Nancy Pelosi. Can you believe it? That's totally the wrong clip.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I demand to know, Mr. Kennedy, whether you approve of this onesie! Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Glad to be with you this evening. Here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 31 January 2025. Dateline Harrisburg, Monday, 27 January. Two Democrat members of the Pennsylvania legislature who evidently have no interest in trying to understand why their party lost the last election boldly and bravely proposed earlier this week to eliminate altogether the line on the birth certificate where you list the sex of the newborn child. Because as we know, assigning a child's sex at birth is such a notoriously imprecise science. In most cases, even when the world's most learned and experienced obstetricians, when the little one pops out into the world, they just kind of furrow their brows and throw up their hands and exclaim, I don't know, beats me. Could be anything, really. I mean, I don't want to go out on a limb and say it looks like a penis and a testicles, and that makes it a male child, because I could be inadvertently committing some sort of transphobic hate crime, and that's just not good science. So, as a responsible practitioner of medicine, on that line on the birth certificate where it says sex, I am just going to write yes. Now, obviously, this is a status quo that leaves much to be desired, so a couple of idiots named Benjamin Sanchez and Joe Webster want to make it the official policy of the great state of Pennsylvania that each newborn child is regarded by the state as a sort of amorphous, sexless blob of humanity, if you will, just waiting to have his or her or they, thems, or Zers brain lovingly imprinted with weird, creepy, leftist sexual politics. Because if there's anything the wokesters have taught us, it's that we don't want the government getting in between doctors and patients. And the best part is, if you're in the baby farming business, you can guarantee every client a child with the gender of their choosing, and you can never be wrong. Why, yes, you did order a female child, and the state of Pennsylvania, they made no official determination on the matter. So you have a female child with a lovely girl penis and little delicate lady testicles. You are welcome. God bless Pennsylvania. Dateline Lansing, Tuesday, 28 January. Disgraced former Transportation Secretary Mayor Pete Buttigieg in a story that provides further proof, as if we needed it, that being a member of a protected intersectional identity group means you must always permanently fail upward in Democrat politics, says he is very interested in running for the Michigan Senate seat currently occupied by Democrat Gary Peters, who surprised many observers when he announced last week that he will not be seeking a third term in 2026. Now, what is there in Mayor Pete's life's work, such as it is, that recommends him to being a U.S. Senator? Well, your guess is as good as this reporter's. In fact, for those fans keeping score at home, Pete was the heterosexual mayor of South Bend, Indiana up until 2016, when he was in serious danger of being defeated for re-election, and then suddenly became the homosexual mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And he was obviously re-elected because, what are you, some kind of fucking homophobe? Now, within 5 minutes, he is a national media darling, and his name is being floated as a potential presidential candidate in 2020, which he then duly becomes. Then he fails spectacularly at that. But since Washington, D.C. is the most ridiculous clown world that has ever existed, he manages to parlay his status as a failed mayor and a failed presidential candidate into a 4-year term as the failed transportation secretary. He told us our roads are racist and our bridges are racist, and the most important thing he can do as a member of the president's cabinet is to unracicize our transportation infrastructure, goddammit. He never got around to doing it, sadly, because he had to go home for 3 months and chest feed the 2 female children that he and his fake gay husband purchased from somewhere. Babies are us? Who knows? I can't say. So best of luck, Michigan. I'm sure you and Senator Mayor Secretary Pete are going to be very happy together. Dateline Los Angeles, Wednesday, 29 January. In a story with more layers of irony than a rap battle between Oscar Wilde and George Carlin, Los Angeles County closed public access to the coastline between Malibu and Playa del Rey this week on account of, quote, toxic or carcinogenic chemicals running off the hillsides as a result of the Palisades fire. Now, you've got to go back quite a ways to properly unpeel this onion of irony. So, why do we have toxic hazardous runoff? Well, because most of Pacific Palisades got burned to cinders recently. Why did most of Pacific Palisades get burned to cinders? Because of a lack of water supply created and exacerbated by bureaucratic incompetence, and that turned the bad fire into a catastrophic fire. Why was there an issue with the firefighting infrastructure? Because the current governor has spent the past several years celebrating himself for destroying dams up in Northern California that contribute to Southern California's municipal supply. Why does Southern California need to import water from Northern California when it sits alongside the world's largest body of water, and we have had all the desalination technology we need since 50 or 60 years ago? Well, because some environmentalist wackos didn't want to inconvenience some stupid sea creatures that nobody ever heard of and you can't even eat. Creatures that are all now going to die anyway from the toxic wildfire runoff. Well done, California eco-warriors. Well done indeed. Dateline Silicon Valley, Thursday, 30 January. In a story that reminds us nothing says feminism like a dude sticking a tampon up his ass, employees at Meta, the parent company of Facebook, are hopping mad about CEO Mark Zuckerberg's decision earlier this month to remove feminine hygiene supplies from the men's restrooms. Now, why were there feminine hygiene supplies in the men's restrooms in the first place? Unclear, at least according to this reporter's admittedly imperfect understanding of human physiology. But certain employees, who had apparently grown accustomed to being able to reach for a tampon while standing at the urinal, they say they are mad as hell, they are not going to take it anymore, and they are going to respond to this calculated outrage by bringing their own feminine hygiene supplies to work and making videos of themselves bringing their own feminine hygiene supplies to work, and then posting those videos on the internet. Yeah, that'll show them. The New York Times reported Thursday, quote, to protest Mr. Zuckerberg's actions, some Meta workers soon brought their own tampons, pads, and liners to the men's bathrooms. 5 people with knowledge of the effort said. A group of employees also circulated a petition to save the tampons. These actions are part of the greater quiet rebellion that Silicon Valley workers have staged as they grapple with the rightward shift of their bosses, end quote. So that's where we are now. You either want tampons in the little boy's room, or you're a right-winger. And I feel like none of these people understand, still, why their party lost the election. But hey, if dudes sticking tampons up their butts is the political hill that you wish to die on, it is a free country. More power to you. God bless you and your sanitary napkin. Dateline Washington, Friday, 31 January. President Donald Trump reiterated this week the possibility of the United States reassuming control over the Panama Canal. And then, right on cue, every fake news sludge factory in the United States and every tin pot douchebag dictator in Latin America started blubbering about what a mean, bad orange man he is. Totally unmentioned in all of this performative caterwauling was any discussion about whether Trump's rationale for a seizure of the canal stands on firm diplomatic and legal footing. Which it does, and here's why. All the Panamanians have to do here is live up to the treaty they signed, and we don't have any problem. I guarantee you it is not Trump's preference to militarily invade Panama and seize the canal zone by force. He would much rather have Panama just do what they're supposed to do, what it's bound by treaty to do, part of which is, number one, don't farm out any of the canal operations to adversaries of the United States, and number two, don't charge vessels different rates to transit the canal according to their country of registration, both of which the Panamanians have been doing, and that's not okay. So you can either change your behavior or you have lost the opportunity to be the operators of the canal. President Theodore Roosevelt personally created the country of Panama in the first place because we wanted to build the canal and the Colombians were being assholes about it. So we said, fine, we are going to arm and supply the rebels who oppose you, and we're going to make sure they have got enough weapons to kick your ass with. And so, Panama was duly born. And so you can't even say we invaded and took the canal zone by force. That would be the act of an imperialist aggressor. We didn't do anything like that. We are America, goddammit, so we did things the democratic way. We fomented a civil war, and we made sure the winning side would extend to us a friendly invitation to come and take the territory that we want. Which is to say, Panama, in case any of this is remotely unclear, the only reason you guys have got a country is because we snapped it into existence. Just don't make us unsnap it, is all we're saying. And please, for the love of God, don't test the resolve of President Donald Trump because it's a test that you will not pass. And because there are only 5 days in the work week, that is the end of this week's Golden Age of Western Civilization News Roundup. And with that, I pass the controls to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host. It is his 29th birthday today, so we all have to be nice to him. The one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
I know. I saw it, and I have a dog, so it's never going to go right. Can you believe that some of your compatriots online believe that 300 years of history were just scrubbed from the record completely? They just say it was completely made up and done by the scribes of the Middle Ages. Basically, the years approaching 1000 AD were scrubbed from the record, and it's called the phantom time theory. Dog is tangled in my camera. This is not going to end well. Hey, I got him. All right. So basically, it hypothesizes that a conspiracy by the Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and possibly the Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, to fabricate the Anno Domini dating system retroactively in order to place them at the special year of AD 1000 and to rewrite history to legitimize Otto's claim to the Holy Roman Empire. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I am saying it's something to think about. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. This has been our conspiracy moment. Now, my compatriot, Juicy J. How you doing,
What's
bud?
going on, y'all? Good to
Run
see
with it.
everybody. It's been a while. Guys, there are a couple things I want to talk about as well. Big shout outs to everybody. Big ups to Caucasian Sasquatch on his 29th birthday. Hell, I'm even older than he is. So we're going to talk about a few things that have been going down on season 2 of the Blast Radius. First thing I want to go into, of course, is immigration. As you guys know, ICE has been very busy, hard at work over the past couple of weeks, going from city to city to get out as many illegal immigrants as possible. A lot of them have been through collateral, and some of them have actually had criminal records prior to. If you look at the new White House press secretary, she says that all of them are, in fact, illegal criminals. Technically, she's correct, but of course, we know what the guy asking the question really meant. Now we look at the impact of that, and if you guys have been paying attention at all to X and or Twitter, whichever one you want to call it, you notice that a lot of places have actually been pretty bare, pretty empty. In fact, my second job where I just came from was really, really light, actually extremely light. In fact, if you look at certain places down in Savannah, Georgia, you have a whole town which is being built from the ground up, the whole neighborhood, which none of the workers showed up. There are places where they're having now hiring signs. There is actually Amazon warehouses out in California where they are bare bones, no one to be found. There are fields in Idaho now which aren't being picked. In fact, I saw a video down south where they were actually a place where they had strawberries, and there were a bunch of people there picking strawberries, and they're
I'm not exactly sure what happened there. He froze up and then went away. So we're going to bring everybody up here. And I'm going to drop that down just so that we don't get a good O face for the entire show.
I know it's such a good O face too.
It is a good one. Look at it. It went black. Oh, well. Maybe.
Well, hopefully we get him back soon.
What's up, old Joe? How you doing, bud? Chill out, bud. My dog's name is Bud.
And your name is the birthday man.
Yeah, apparently I'm the birthday boy. I'll actually.
I want to know what you have to say about onesies.
Onesies, they're great on redheads, especially if they're chunky. All right.
yeah. So I accidentally knocked my Ethernet cord out, and freeze up. Yeah. So
All right, you
yeah,
want to pick
because
up where you
when I moved my arm,
You want to pick up?
Oh, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Anyways, if we couple that with what happened earlier this week in regards to tariffs, we now know that the trade war is on. The trade war is on when Justin Trudeau decided to, on February 1st, when the tariffs being signed into law went into effect. Now, Justin Trudeau, not but a day ago, went and had a press conference about 30 minutes involving some Q&A. There are those, of course, who argue that there's no difference between a Canadian and an American, although I've never seen our president have a speech in both English and Spanish like they have in Canada, which is both in English and French. Get that. But what's more is that they decided to put a 25% tariff on $168 billion worth of American goods. 10% of that will start in the next 2 weeks, so that way they can give their truckers some time to catch up. Mexico is expected to follow suit with a 25%. Claudia Sheinbaum had a quick press conference in regards to what will happen when the tariffs come into effect. They have yet to announce. China is also expected to put their own tariffs in place. Right now, they only have only 10% of their goods on a tariff, or 10% tariff on all of their goods, up to $50 billion. We're going to see whether or not that is increased, or whether or not they decide to escalate ahead of time. Now, if you couple that with what's going to happen with DOGE in regards to federal workers, it's estimated that up to 2 million federal workers will be laid off with the new restructuring of the government, and with the buyout plan for these 2 million workers, for them to be gone from the federal government by September. Elon Musk is planning to have a Spaces meeting at 12 midnight Eastern. That's tonight, to decide or to explain what's going to happen with these federal workers taking this buyout. One of which, of course, one of the biggest questions is, do they have to continue working during this buyout time? Of course, the answer is no. They're actually going to get paid for 8 months, an 8-month severance package, basically to do nothing. Now, why am I bringing up everything that ties into economics? Well, that's a very good question if you're thinking that. And it's one thing really that I've been saying on my channel, I've been saying on other channels, and I've been noticing indicators of, and I think a lot of people should pay attention to this, and that's the R word. Recession. Now, a lot of you may not realize it, but we've actually had strong indicators of a recession popping up since July. Actually, we had a pullback in mid-July, and that was during the whole yen carry trade that had occurred in Japan in order to stabilize the Japanese yen. Now, with that, you can see that the American dollar since then has been pretty stable. And we also need to keep in mind that the FOMC meeting that occurred earlier this week decided not to drop rates, even though Trump had demanded that the Fed drop interest rates. Jay Powell decided not to, stating that as of right now, inflation was stable, and they're hoping that the yield curve flattens itself out. Now, for those of you who don't know economics, I'm not a financial expert, so don't listen to me. Do your own research. But I will say this. That one of the issues we're going to end up having is when the yield curve hits 50 basis points is when we're going to really start feeling it. And of course, some of you may feel that a recession is not going to matter. But keep in mind, if you couple the fact that we're going to have less consumers in the market due to illegal immigration, we're going to have less of a workforce, 2 million less, due to getting rid of the federal workers that Trump is planning to get rid of via Doge. And if you take into account that right now the dollar is still too hot, right now it hasn't cooled off, deflation hasn't set in, we're still inflationary. Well, as of right now, we're setting up for a very nasty recession. And keep in mind, you guys may think, well, we can just print our way out of a recession. But then we risk going into HR, which is HI, I should say, which is hyperinflation. We risk that, of course. I don't think that's going to be the case, although the Great Melt-Up is a real thing, and the Great Melt-Up we're watching happen right now. For those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, I encourage you to do your own research. But I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Like I said, this is not financial advice. I'm just giving you the news from the past week from a financial perspective. Sasquatch, Captain, take it away.
Excellent. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have to bring it. We found him. We got him. We found him, ladies and gentlemen. We got him, the one guy. Can you believe it? We've got Soy Jack. We found him.
Oh, dang, I can't wait.
The search was long and hard. It actually happened. The legitimate meme taking place in front of you. Here we go.
Tough loser, fucking coward, tough loser, won't even fire me at the end of my shift. Waits till the end of my shift. Here he is.
He literally just.
Yes, he did the full Soy Jack meme, all of it.
Damn, dude.
How? And I think he did it unironically. Now what?
That's a lot to take in.
The UPS store?
He got fired, and he's upset because they fired him at the end of the shift. Yeah, that's a dick move, but you can expect it. I don't see why.
And then but then here's where my mind always goes. How did he think this video was going to help his cause?
Nothing. He was just going to end up getting fired and then get roasted on the internet.
Yeah,
because you were fired either way, but now you're fired and you have an embarrassing video of yourself acting like a total bitch. So
yep. So apparently, not only do you suck at your job, you also suck at the internet.
Loser.
Yes.
Fucking coward, tough loser, won't even fire me at the beginning of my shift. Waits till the end of my shift.
The literal.
He literally just.
And this guy, I'm telling you right now, this guy is way too old and has way too much gray in his beard to be acting like this.
I agree.
I get a hold of yourself, sir. Come on, man.
Real.
I mean, why are you working a job like that at your age to begin with? I won't even go there. Let's just handle one thing at a time.
Hey, listen, man. It all depends, man. People fall on weird times at different times of their life. Maybe he needed that job. Maybe that was a second job. Maybe that was a cushion for his finances.
And this bastard fired me at the end of my shift.
You don't go like that for your second job.
Well, now you're getting paid for one more shift, so what's the problem? It's not like you're not going to get your money. What the hell?
Didn't even get a severance package. Damn. Poor guy.
I better get my fucking stock options, you asshole.
Man, what store was that? Was that a...
I was wondering that too.
Yeah, I was wondering because at first I thought it was like I thought it was
I
a
think
UPS
it's
store,
UPS.
but
Hold on.
it is
you said-
UPS.
This guy is the epitome of soy jacking. He goes through every single possible soy jack in the span of 51 seconds. It's unbelievable. It's beyond impressive, actually. And the way that he brings like the camera close to his face reminds me of the Dark Knight with the Joker. And the way he keeps calling this guy a cuck coward loser is a beautiful piece of pathetic artistry. He's speaking like it's League of Legends and he's whining about his top lane food. Now, I have no doubt that in the moment, this probably felt very cathartic for him, just having this full-blown, expulsion of the demons inside. He's really upset and he's just letting it all hang loose. He's going hog wild with everything, and I bet it felt like a great relief. But man, you shouldn't have filmed this.
I know. I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, those are separate acts to me. The desire to have the outburst is. I don't think you can say that's a sudden outburst when he was thinking lucidly enough to pull out the little smartphone and get just the right little camera angle before he launched into his little bitch fit.
Right. But oh my God, how did he unironically do the soy jack, the full soy jack, dude? Like all of it? Was that?
I don't know. I'm no soy jack expert, so I'll leave that to the audience to determine.
Good
Me neither,
question.
actually.
Let's put that on a poll. Like a stripper on Tuesday.
Anywho, what do you guys want to dig into first?
Well, since we were just on the topic of tariffs, I mentioned this briefly to Squatch backstage before the show that I noticed about 6 months ago during the campaign, Trump started giving an argument for tariffs that's like exactly the same, almost word for word, as the argument that I've been giving for some years now. I'm not saying there's any relation. I'm sure it's a coincidence, but it's still kind of cool. But anyway, the way he's been approaching it is, and we need to differentiate between what we're trying to achieve here between the Mexico-Canada tariffs and the China tariffs, because those are different objectives. With Mexico and Canada, we're just trying to improve their behavior, because you are allowing contraband into our country that you're not allowed to supposed to be allowing in, and we would like that behavior to change, and we're going to make it hurt a little bit until we see evidence that it does. With China, on the other hand, and it's exactly the same thing we did with Japan back in the 80s and the early 90s. The objective with those tariffs is, if you want access to our markets, then come and build factories in America and build your stuff with American workers. And you just have to balance it to where, do I pay the tariff or do I go build a factory? Which one costs me less in the long run? And I thought it was very refreshing that he started explaining the matter in those terms, because I think they're good terms and they're easily accessible to the average person who might not otherwise normally know or understand or care what tariffs are and what they actually do.
If people actually watched his World Economic Forum speech that he gave, I believe last week in Davos, he explains that these companies will have the lowest tariffs in the world, or they have the lowest taxes in the world if they come to the United States and build their manufacturing here. I believe he gave them a 15% corporate tax rate that they'll have, which actually is extremely low. That's extremely low, to be honest. And they would be getting a great deal if they bring their factories here. Now, understand this. A lot of people are going to say, wow, there's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to come back. And there will be jobs that will be created from that. Make no mistake. However, if you look at his first press conference he did when he started signing the first tranche of executive orders, Trump also mentioned that he doesn't have a problem with legal immigration and that there's going to have to be a lot of people who are going to come to work these jobs. Meaning, and this is my theory, is that if you couple that with Elon Musk and Doge's plan to uncap the H-1B visa limit, you're going to have a lot of people from foreign nations who, I don't think it's just going to be your everyman worker, but I think it's going to have a lot of middle management and a lot of administrative people who are going to be coming from other countries, from those companies, to fill the managerial positions for said factories, said infrastructure that needs to be built, and that you're going to have your everyman, basically your worker bees, are going to be from the American populace. Not to mention, they're going to end up requiring that the companies who come here are going to have to buy raw materials and buy their supplementary materials from U.S. companies, which is going to be one of the ways we're going to try and boost our economy and boost the manufacturing. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
Does this mean we're going to get call centers?
With actual Americans in it? Maybe.
Right. Hello, my name is Tim.
Hi there, how y'all doing? How can I help you today?
Maybe.
Well, hey,
It
bro,
wouldn't be surprising.
one of the best experiences, customer service experiences I ever had to do with calling Rock Auto to try to get a flywheel for my 69 El Camino. They had sent me the wrong one. I ordered the wrong one. It was my mistake. And I called him up and explained what had happened. He's like, well, let me tell you what you're going to do there, bud. I want you to go put it back there, that box that I sent with you. I want you to put it back in it. I want you to take that thing back up. You set it out there next to let's see if somebody come by, pick it up. It'll be just fine. Then we had a good 30-minute conversation talking about just stupid stuff. But then he sold me another flywheel.
Hey, there you go.
Is it too early for a drastic change of topic?
No, go ahead.
I'm wondering what y'all think about that Monday plane crash.
That was the one in Philly, right?
Yeah.
No, the first one, the Washington one.
All
right. So I've looked at it, and I've looked at the flight plans and the circumstances, and I think this is a case of the what is it? TSA, not TSA, the traffic,
FAA.
FAA having do you know what immunity in an FAA trial is?
Yeah.
So the individual has an issue and they have a point of convergence, and a point of convergence in traffic control speak is a very near miss. That's where two radars come together so closely that you can't determine the difference between them. And if this happens more than once in the classic cycle, they get retrained. They get pulled from active duty, given a week off, and then they're brought in to do the full workup again on how to maintain this stuff. And then they're put back into circulation. Traffic controllers do get burned out. Whether or not DEI had anything to do with it, I'm unsure. But I can tell you that the concept of immunity that was put in under Obama is an issue. It prevents the retraining of individuals who could benefit from it, and that could make the skies safer for everyone.
Retraining should be standard operating procedure, honestly, at any point. I don't understand why that there would be any kind of clause put in to prevent retraining. I think that when Trump gave the press conference and he made it an issue of DEI, that was just low hanging fruit for his base.
And I thought it was regrettable that he mentioned it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't want him to go that route. I was hoping that he went the route of this is a tragedy. We're gonna have an investigation.
But it's also one of those cases where I don't know if it was just Trump being bad Trump or if it was Trump playing 4D chess. Because let's look at what happened as soon as he mentioned DEI, and he did not. There's no place in that press conference where he actually says DEI caused the thing. All he does is mention the fact that standards were lowered under the previous administration and they're not going to be lowered anymore. But what we saw the whole fake news ecosystem just start making the sausage the way they always do, but only when Trump is president. Because within 30 minutes, they each had a headline up saying, Trump asserts without evidence that DEI caused plane crash, even though he never did that. But they still all printed it because, of course, they did.
He did say more than that, though, because keep in mind he alluded to how you had people who were hired that had mental disorders or neurodevelopmental issues.
Yes, but he stopped short. He stopped short of saying definitively that any of that caused this incident.
I understand, but the fact that he didn't mention that is enough to extrapolate that he's, of course, meaning DEI. So I mean, he's been giving them. I mean, he's been giving the media a lot of ammunition to use against him. I mean, if you look at the first press conference, I talked about this when he was signing in his first and second tranche of executive orders. He mentions how if one of the countries, Spain in particular, doesn't cooperate economically, that they would be suffering from tariffs along with other EU nations, and that Spain was a BRICS nation. For those of you that know what the BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. That's an economic alliance. there aren't, outside of Russia and Belarus, there are no European nations that are in BRICS. So the fact that he says that, that's one thing right there that the fake news media chewed on. This is another thing the fake news media chews on. A lot of people are going to say that Trump has a lot of social and political capital that he can get away with saying this, but there's going to reach a point to where he's going to have one of his Trumpisms that's too egregious to ignore. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that he stops giving this low-hanging fruit to the opposition, because it's really early on and he hasn't accomplished enough, in my opinion, to have these kind of Trumpisms so soon. Maybe because he's riding off the momentum from Inauguration Day and there's a little bit of that left, sure. But I don't think he has enough capital at this point, or enough political capital to keep saying things like that. Is eventually the bottom.
He does have capital, but that's not the way he wants to spend it.
Exactly. You know, and it's going to be really wise with it. And then, now, if you do you care if we switch gears, or you want to chew on this topic a little bit longer? I don't mind if you want.
Go ahead. It's
There
fine.
was-
It's fine.
Well, because it's not switching too much of a gear, but only because this is much closer to home, and that was the Philadelphia crash that occurred back in actually, what I want to say, this was Thursday.
Day before yesterday.
Thursday or
Yeah.
Friday, I think. Thursday or Friday, you had the Philadelphia crash. I don't know if you guys had seen the video of that. It was actually a medical jet that had crashed. That's still under investigation. But there is something to be said, though, about having two plane crashes happen within a week of each other. And not only just within a week of each other, but within the same region. DC and Philly are not that far away. You have to keep in mind, I mean, those are both in my backyard.
100 miles, give or take, right?
Exactly. One which is almost literally. So I'm wondering if maybe him alluding to DEI, and given the fact of the regions where these occurred, if maybe Donnie's got some merit to what he said. I don't want to sit there and say that this is not the case, because DEI just doesn't mean a different gender or a different race. It also
But
may mean a
it's-
different neurodevelopmental issue that someone may have. Go ahead.
It's also true that ever since the airlines and the FAA both got on the diversity train and started doing, intersectional quotas and just the playing the whole DEI game, there have been people following this story and keeping track of every near miss as the near misses have been piling up, more of them and more of them and more of them. And but once they went down that road, there really was only one way that this story could possibly end. And whether or not this incident is directly attributable to that, I don't think there's any argument to be made that when you introduce anything that is not merit-based hiring in a job that important, the consequences are going to be disastrous.
Extremely. I believe 2 people died from the plane crash, and then 1 person died in a car getting hit by debris in Philadelphia.
Everybody on the plane was a Mexican citizen, right? If I'm not
In
mistaken. Yeah.
In Philly?
Yep.
I have to look back at it. I have to look back because it was a medical jet that they had.
It was a medical jet. The patient was a juvenile, and I believe the patient and the mother and 2 doctors and 2 flight crew were all Mexican nationals, and the plane was going back to Mexico with a stop, I want to say, in Missouri. But yeah,
It might be.
It
You
was-
might be right.
and
But
that's a
it's
strange
wild,
thing.
though. It's
And I
very
heard all.
wild when this happens in such a short time frame. You have a better chance of being struck by lightning than a plane crash.
You sure do, and it's not close. And it's not
Not
close.
even anywhere near close. So that's why this timing is very odd. It's extremely odd, especially given the region, because you're talking about in the most populated part of the country where something like this would happen.
Can I
No.
make an interjection here that as odd as it is to have 2 plane crashes so close together in time and space, you kind of got to expect some of that to happen whenever you have undertrained individuals that are, or rather trained individuals, but not update training individuals, right? I don't know what jobs you've worked, but most of the jobs I worked, every 6 months or year, 2 years, you have to go back and do like the little basic test over again.
Mm-hmm.
And they call that retraining, but it just verifies that you're consciously aware of all the basic tick points on a particular plan. So retraining.
Yeah,
is
just a periodic skill check, just to make sure you've got all the rudiments down. Still, that's all it is.
Now it depends on the company. Some companies will actually have refresher courses where you have to stop what you're doing for a day or two, and you have to go into either off-site or on-site, and they'll have a trainer there to do that. And I know one of the companies I work for, the refresher courses actually aren't very hands-on; they're hands-off, and it's something you do monthly, but it's all virtual. So it's different for every company. And then one of the other company that I work for, the other company I work for, at any point you can request a retrain. If you don't feel like you're adequate at what you're doing with your task, or if you happen to get any kind of write up for your task, on the spot you can request a retrain, and then once the retrain is done, your write up goes away. So
The thing about the Philly crash that keeps sticking in my head is that I heard the earliest piece of debris they have along the flight track is an oxygen canister. So you kind of have to wonder when that piece of debris is a quarter mile removed from where the main debris field is, whether that's something that triggered the chain of events, and who knows. But it's a strange thing that isn't easily explicable on its own, I found. Like why that one object so far away from everything else? It seems like it might be pertinent.
It might be. I mean,
might be.
I don't know. I'm using
eyewitnesses said the aircraft was on fire as it was coming down. So
I've heard that actually. I've heard that as well. Yeah, but if you look at the actual video, it's too hard to tell because I've seen the video from different angles. All you see is a light coming down. If you ever seen a plane flying in the sky, it just looks like a small light that's moving fast. So if eyewitnesses are saying that, it might actually be the case.
As far as the Washington crash, I think I've got kind of a working theory that comports with the facts that are publicly available. I mean, at first, when we just saw the raw track of the respective aircrafts, it looked pretty inexplicable, because how does a chopper just fly straight in and T-bone a fixed wing aircraft that's on final trying to land? But knowing the little bits of information that have come out since then, and knowing especially that we had one controller who was working the civilian fixed wing craft and the military rotorcraft on different frequencies, and I think if there's a single point of failure, it might be right there. We also know that the American flight, the one that was landing, had just been rerouted off of the normal runway to runway 33, which is a normal run, because I assume they had a backup in the landing pattern, and they were trying to move anybody out of it that they could. And this plane is small enough to land on the shorter runway 33, so they reroute him. The controller hasn't talked to the chopper for a couple minutes at this point. She's probably got her too much more workload than she should have. She's worried about making sure that this American flight gets lined up on the runway that she has just rerouted him to. 30 seconds before impact, then she remembers, oh shit, that chopper exists. And that's when, this is my theory, again, I have no proof of this, but I think that's when we know there's a transmission where she tells the chopper to pass behind the American plane. And I don't think the chopper ever heard that transmission, because I think she forgot to switch over the frequency. And it also means that the two aircraft could never hear each other. And I don't think either one ever knew the other was there, because if you're the American flight, all of your attention is focused on landing the airplane. You have just had to input a whole new landing pattern because you're on a different runway than the one you planned for. And this chopper is at your 9 o'clock low, coming upward at you. You probably can't see him out the windshield. And if you're the chopper, then the other guy is coming down on you from your 3 o'clock high. Mm-hmm. Probably can't see him either. So, yeah.
I'm a bit of a flight aficionado. I've played virtually every flight game ever created. I was one of those guys that played the original Top Gun game on NES and actually landed on the aircraft carrier at the end. just so you know what a nerd I am. There is a distinct difference on any oblique approach from a perfectly linear approach. That chopper was coming straight up and at the airplane. The airplane was coming down and at the chopper. And this sounds like lax planning or bad piloting. The assumption is there's so much space and air that there's not going to be a convergence. And so the pilots are trained to not deviate unless told to, because the opposing airplane will be told to deviate unless you are. And so until you're told to deviate, and with the airplane pilot at that point, that would have involved an entirely different flight instructions to come in for a different pass, right? He was already on final approach. Nothing left for him to do but follow the final approach. The chopper pilot, though, if they were in contact with the tower, unfortunately, that's where the fault's going to land, because the plane landing has no choice but to come in on the line, tack, and angle that the tower gave them. If they don't, they crash.
Yeah, he is completely focused on the thing he's trying to do.
But visually speaking, that particular approach is especially difficult to deal with because both vehicles were moving in a linear path towards or away from each other.
But
I think there's go ahead, Jay.
Well, another thing we need to consider, and it's something that Trump brought up in his press conference, is what was the pilot of the chopper thinking? Because if you look at the video, you see there's a solid 5 to 7 seconds, easy, before they made contact.
That's why I was
up, could have went down, side to side.
But until the tower tells you to attempt to deviate in any direction, may run the risk of running into that airplane, because if you're not told to deviate, the other vehicle will be.
I think that might have something to do with the fact that the chopper is flying dark and the flight crew has night vision goggles on, which is offers a much more restricted field of view than you would have if you were looking at it with the naked eye.
But in less space, though, it should be easier for a rotary wing aircraft to move or maneuver.
Yes, because a rotorcraft always has multiple options of evasion. That's why choppers just don't crash into fixed wing aircraft. It doesn't happen. It's completely improbable.
Okay, I've got video of the other crash, the one over the residential area.
Philly?
Yeah, the Philly crash.
Yeah.
You'll have a zip come in on this angle. You'll see the light blink once before everything goes to hell in a bucket. I want to know, do you think this airplane is on fire before it enters the frame, or does it explode on impact?
It's on fire.
Yeah, I guess you could say. I mean, you see a slight flash.
I think that's
through that frame.
I think that's flight. That's the flight lights. There's one white light that blinks. There's a red light and a green light, right? It gives a triangle of reference for people that see it at night. And I think what you're seeing is the belly of the aircraft on a oblique angle coming into the ground it's ballistic. There's nothing flying that airplane.
But bear in mind, this aircraft also has got two rear mounted engines on it. So,
but my point is, if it comes in like a cosmic bolide, chances are the pilot's already out of commission. Pilots don't crash; they have controlled descents, right? Or uncontrolled contact with the ground. They don't crash.
Yeah, I mean, it seems unavoidable that something catastrophic and unrecoverable happened in midair seconds after liftoff.
Yeah, and that's why the people who were saying, with the eyewitnesses claiming that the plane was on fire, there's no way they could have been able to see that in time to get a clear view. Not at that speed.
I don't know. Sometimes you see shooting stars, bro, and you could be sitting right there with another dude looking straight at the same quadrant of the sky who misses it. It's just a matter of whether you happen to be looking that way or not.
But at that
So-
speed, though, how can you tell whether or not it's fire versus just the after image from light from the plane? That's my thing.
I mean, really, we would need to look at multiple angles to know definitively.
You would have to have a camera that's already fixed in that position in the sky, that vector in the sky, to be able to capture it frame by frame, and then
Sure,
someone would have to
sure.
get that footage and slow it down frame by frame, zoom in, then slow it down frame by frame to see whether or not it was on fire.
And it would have to be decently pixel,
Exactly.
1080 or something like that. Or
I'm still thinking that something has to happen inside the cabin that incapacitates both engines and the flight controls, because
not necessarily.
even if you have one engine flame out, that's recoverable. You've still got an engine.
Yes, that is correct. But here's the thing: when you're coming, and this is a full. That's why I paused it right here. That fireball is an entire engine, is an entire airplane's worth of fuel. That airplane was full.
Well, I think you're also looking at the oxygen canisters that were on board are making that blast bigger too.
Sure. But what I'm getting at is this: just like when you're landing, when you're taking off, you're given a specific vector and a specific angle by which you leave the airspace, and you're supposed to just go that way. And if something happens in that critical 15 seconds, 30 seconds, it's very difficult to recover, because if you lose an aileron, if you lose a wing, if you lose, if one pilot has a heart attack and the other pilot wasn't paying attention enough to grab the stick, that sucker bellies over and hits the dirt. You've got to be in the air for 30 seconds before you're high enough to really kind of, to have the time to be able to react to it. So this could be as simple as homie had a stroke. That's all.
Homie having a stroke doesn't make engines flame out, though.
It depends on what happens when he has the stroke. If he kicks the choke, if he pushes it, when you're taking off, you've got your hands on the throttles. If something happens, he has a seizure, he freaking sneezes, anything like that changes the flight vectors of the next 10 seconds, right?
No, you're on takeoff thrust, so you don't actually have your hands on the throttle levers, but
well, you get what I'm saying.
Even still, I mean, something happened where all flight controls in both engines were lost catastrophically at the same moment, and I'm still thinking about that oxygen cylinder. That's just me.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's any number of things that could go wrong in a cockpit that could make takeoff or landing dangerous.
I
don't think it was in the cockpit. I think the guys in the cockpit might have not had the faintest idea what was happening.
I want to switch back gears real quick to going back to the economy, because I think we kind of skipped over the whole issue with the tariffs. Because I think it's really important. A lot of people believe that the tariffs are going to supplement or somehow eliminate the idea of us having an income tax. I think it's foolish. A lot of people are going off of what Trump's whole idea, his love affair with McKinley, back when we had the tariff king, because he mentions a lot how that time
I love his McKinley love affair. That's really great.
He has a huge love affair with McKinley, and how during that time period where it was the richest time period of American history. But he seems to also forget that was also a time when the United States had a lot more control over our region of the world. We had a lot more control, not only of our region of the world, but also the amount of immigration that would come in. There's a lot of different factors, and I don't know whether or not he thinks that what McKinley did in that time period with tariffs is a one-to-one to what we have right now in our time period, but they just don't match up.
Yeah, I don't. I think he probably doesn't think that, but I do kind of like that explanation he's been giving, just because it's so accessible and easily comprehensible when he says, look, we had the Gilded Age, we made all this money, and then McKinley got shot, and then Theodore Roosevelt spent all the money that McKinley made. And, he's not wrong. It's a simplistic reading of history, but he's not wrong. I mean,
hold on now. Let's look at what we got for all that money. We got all the national parks, San Juan Hill. That's pretty much the money that got Puerto Rico, wasn't it? I mean,
Panama Canal.
I mean, yeah, the Panama Canal. There's all kinds of amazing crap homie did with that money. So we're not selling Theodore Roosevelt short. We're just saying that it was the golden age of American industry.
And did Spain sink the Maine? Probably not, but we're glad they didn't.
But it didn't. But guess what? It didn't matter now, did it?
It didn't matter.
Didn't matter. No, really.
Because we needed that war to happen in order to that war was basically us supplanting Spain and assuming their station among the great powers of the earth, and then.
Well, by that point, Spain was just a middling power, even in Europe by European standards. They
were circling the drain for quite a long time.
Yeah. Well, because even before then, I mean, you look during the wars they had in the 18th century. That's when their colonies in South Central and North America started declaring independence and slipping away. And even the colonies that declared independence from Spain at that time started declaring independence from one another. Keep in mind, a lot of those South and Central
which is where we got Panama.
Bigger. Exactly, they were much bigger than they are now. In fact, if you look at Guatemala and Honduras were actually part of Mexico at one point. Actually, after the Mexican-American War, those two states seceded from Mexico.
Yeah, and the South American wars that were fought in between the 1880s and up until the start of World War I. Those are really fascinating wars to study that most people don't even know about. I especially from the naval side.
I think what was it? There was one war between I think it's Paraguay and Uruguay where it was so bloody. This is in the 19th century. It was so bloody that they didn't have enough men to keep fighting the war. They literally did not have enough men to fight the war. Not that they didn't have any of the resources. The men was the resource they didn't have enough of, and they had to have a peace treaty because of that. So. Yeah, it is very
plenty of guns, not enough men to wield them.
Exactly. You know, kind of like something else we have going on the other side of the world. But we're not going to talk about that today. Another thing I want to bring up, guys, is Elon Musk and his clarification of Doge. What Doge's plan is to shrink the government because he's going to have a Spaces tonight at midnight. I might stay up just to listen to that Spaces. I shouldn't, but I might.
I'm curious. I'm curious to see what gets said there.
Well, it's 12 Eastern, so it'll be 9 o'clock your time, so you won't have any issue at all being able to listen to it. But he's going to clarify what the transitional process is for these 2 million some odd federal workers that are going to be basically transitioned out of the government, because that's going to be a lot of people you're pouring into now, or you're taking out of the workforce, which is very recessionary. You don't want to see that happen. You want to see people consume. You want to see people who are contributing to the economy and who are consumers. But at the same time, you also want to see the government shrinking. You want to, get rid of waste. So it's a really weird balancing act that's starting to occur.
I do think it is the buyout idea is a pretty good idea because there has to be some kind of incentive for people to self-deport from the swamp, if you will. I mean, just in exactly the same way as we're going to have to come up with a system of incentivizing people to self-deport from the country in general, because we're not going to forcibly remove 11 million people. It's just a logistical impossibility. You're going to have to offer some kind of carrots and sticks in order to hasten the process.
Assuming it's 11 million. Now, I'm the only credible 11 million, the credible estimates, but there is one estimate I've only seen one estimate outside of the mainstream sources that you could consider credible, and that was one study from Yale that they did back in back in late 2023, where they estimated that it was closer to 20 million. But that's literally the only source I can find that claims that the amount of illegal immigration even soars anywhere near to that point. Let's assume, though, it is. Let's assume for a moment that it is 20 million. Okay. If the anecdotal evidence that we're being given off of just Twitter, because that's the only real source you're going to see a lot of these videos. Oh, Twitter and TikTok, but I don't have TikTok. Let's just say that's true, though. There are going to be now millions of jobs that are just going to be vacated overnight. Like I said, in Savannah, Georgia, there's that whole town that's not being built. I was speaking with somebody in the Amazon warehouses in California. They are empty. They're now bone dry. They don't have enough people. So now is the time when all this shit we heard about how they took our jobs. Now Americans have all this opportunity to go and scoop those jobs up. So nobody can say they don't have opportunity anymore. No one can make
and one would hope that our labor force participation rate is going to go up
We're gonna find out.
I have something to play.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Continue.
We're gonna find out.
No,
Listen, this is a really true test at the start of Trump's presidency. Is the American people putting their money where their mouth is? Quite literally.
Yep, you're damn right.
You complain about jobs not being available. Do you want the opportunities now? Are you willing to hustle? Because the groundwork's being laid for you to do that. If no taxes on overtime is going to be a thing, the groundwork's being laid for you to get 2-3 jobs if you want it. Because all these jobs now are available. Now,
I want to put up this. I want to put up this.
Jobs. Now the question is: are Americans willing to work the jobs that the left said they didn't want to work? I think this is going to be a very interesting test to see how Americans respond.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Digital Denizen raises a good point.
Whenever billionaires talk about shrinking government, they just mean cutting spending on poor people. It's never actually reducing the size or scope of government or cutting spending on corporations. Go ahead.
In the half century or so that I've been alive, there has not been really any meaningful cut in federal spending. We've had, for pretty much the last 100 years now, nothing but inexorable growth in the size and scope of the central government. Occasionally, once every so often, we will get a group of self-styled fiscal conservatives who gain power in the Congress ever so briefly, and they call it a spending cut when they just roll back the rate of a scheduled spending increase. That's not a spending cut. In order to effect an actual cut in spending, you have to actually start slashing and burning actual offices and agencies and departments, because that's the only way that spending cuts really happen as a practical matter. And yes, you're going to wind up, obviously, dumping a lot of people onto the labor market, and that's going to have effects that are wide-ranging and some of which probably can't even be foreseen, but we're going to see how it all plays out.
I don't like saying, and a lot of people kind of look at it because yes, we dealt with the GFC back in 2008. We were able to bounce back, but did we really bounce back, or did we keep on kicking the can down the road? And now, if we end up,
we kept on kicking the can down the fucking road.
Exactly. So if we end up having another recession again, is that going to compound the issues that we had from 2008? Are we looking at something that's even more of a severe recession, or are we going to end up going to the D word, which nobody wants to hear again? We haven't heard that word in a century. I don't think we want to have to experience that.
In my most optimistic view, I want to say that unleashing the potential of unfettered energy exploration, like we're in the process of doing, can offset of some of the less savory effects that are inevitably going to happen when we shutter vast swaths of the central government. But it's all going to meet in the middle somewhere somehow. And I'm not going to make any predictions about where the meeting point is, but we will all have to see.
I'll be honest. If things get that bad, let's say that when this recession, I think it's a when, not an if, because I think the spending velocity has just gone out of control and we can't stop it. But I think that if we do end up having a recession, it does pop off, and it is really severe. If it does get to the point where we end up going from recession to depression, I don't think that today's Americans are built for that. Because even our great-grandparents who actually dealt with that time period, who were made of tougher stuff, if you look at the accounts, I mean, it was bad when people were starving in the streets. You had whole populations of wildlife hunted into extinction. You had people boiling boots to eat the leather. Today's Americans are not built like that.
My grandparents grew up in the Depression, and they would have a hard time wrapping their heads around the idea that poor people have big screen TVs now.
That poor people are fat. They're fat.
People are fat.
And they're fat. Yeah, exactly.
Let me ask you this. Is that a nutrition issue given how much nutrition a dollar purchases? Or is that a production issue given how cheaply we produce American goods? Consumables specifically.
Well, it has to do with bad nutrition. It has to do with fewer people doing physical work every day. It's a confluence of several different circumstances, really. I don't think there's one thing you can pin it on.
And also keep in mind, it's far cheaper now. I mean, you can go to just about any dollar store, Dollar General, Dollar Tree, what have you, and even if you had $5, you can get a decent meal that you can heat up in a microwave. Sure, you're eating
Sure.
absolute shit, but you can do it. You
Well, that's
can
my
even with $5.
That's
Yeah,
my point.
but I think it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
How,
Sure.
do either of y'all live anywhere remotely rural?
No.
I mean,
Okay.
I'd have to take a little bit of a drive, but
Okay.
Likewise.
I'm very rural, very way far outside. I'm technically a suburb of Atlanta, but it's like way out there, right? We have farmers markets. It is cheaper by far to go to a local farmers market and purchase your Whole Foods than it is to go to a Whole Foods and purchase your Whole Foods. And it's so much cheaper typically, which for me, this is not a consideration because I'm a block away from where the farmers market's held. So I can literally walk to it, and I do. But it's usually cheap enough to represent the gas you use to get there and back. Maybe not the time too, but it's its own experience, I think.
would you argue it's cheaper than even shopping in a big box store if you wanted to buy in bulk?
Well, of course
Probably
not.
is.
Well, no, of course not, because in your case or in Captain's case, you have to drive an hour, 45 minutes to get over there. You got to deal with traffic and everything. You've got to spend the gas. You've got to spend the time that you could spend doing other stuff. And if you're buying in bulk, they might not have the bulk of specifically what you're after. And so a box store actually makes more sense for bulk.
But I would submit also that what you buy from the box store might be cheaper per unit, but you're going to wind up throwing away more of that food than you would the food you bought at the farmer's market.
True. Locally, we have all kinds of. I mean, I'm in Middle Georgia, and we have people who come up from Florida with veggies, and we have people who come down from the mountains with like specialty fruit, strawberries, whatever. So our farmers markets are excellent, but they're also subsidized by the county, the state, and possibly federal. I'm not sure. What's up?
Oh,
Larry?
governments do love to subsidize farmers markets. That's for damn sure.
Well, here locally, we have, I think, 247 slots and another 127 vendor locations. Slots allow you to bring in a full trailer and a whole, like, I don't know, 10-foot spread, whereas a vendor location allows you basically a single parking spot space. So we have a bunch of slots as opposed to like a whole bunch of vendor locations.
Mhm.
So, we have some of our local restaurants do get some of their bulk fruit and vegetables from people who are at the farmers market. So, and you really can tell when you go to a local buffet here and it's the Country Buffet or it's Carol's over there, you can tell that food was grown and produced locally because it tastes and pardon the pun, digest fresh, right? There's just a difference and you can taste it.
Well, and that's another issue that we need to talk about that we don't talk about often enough is the amount of our energy resources that we devote to moving food from one place to another that we don't really have any good reason to be moving. Which is a function of national industrialized supply chains, but it just winds up being a wildly out of whack equation in the end, ultimately. In terms of the energy you're devoting to transporting that food to another distribution center where it gets transported to a sub-distribution center where it finally goes to and you could have grown it locally in the first place.
Not to mention any of the waste from the food that ends up getting either destroyed or spoils in between transit.
Sure.
Which is going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially,
Which is going to happen.
especially if it requires a cold chain. Especially if it requires a cold chain. Which cold chains do break. Let's be honest. I've worked in food service before. I worked in I still work in the logistics industry. Cold chains get broken, guys. Even food that reaches your shelves, sometimes it gets broken.
If you've ever gotten a hold to one of those SpongeBobs that maybe is missing a chromosome in your SpongeBob pop, You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes. It happens. It happens. Well, kind of getting back, because food is a great point. If you guys are avocado lovers, keep in mind when these tariffs start rolling, good luck, especially during Cinco de Mayo when you want to make that guac, because 90% of our avocados come from Mexico.
Fuck 'em.
Cherries, apparently. I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying. Another thing too, because Claudia Scheinbaum had a,
Finish what you're saying. Just hear me out after.
Okay. Another thing too that Claudia Scheinbaum mentioned in one of her press conferences, how Stellantis, GM, and Ford have some of their biggest plants in Mexico. So, and of course, the auto industry is a huge industry, not just for the United States, but for North America as a whole. So when these tariffs do, when we start feeling them, because they've already popped off, but when we start to really feel them, we're going to feel them in the auto market industry, which means the new car market. By the way, people aren't trying to buy new cars. Listen, my car broke down, and I went to the auction to buy a used car. The used car market right now is skyrocketing. If you think it's bad now for used car markets, in the used car market, it's going to get even worse, especially when it comes to needing spare parts. Go ahead, Sasquatch.
I've got a used car for sale, incidentally.
Specifically for avocados and pistachios specifically, but avocados are one of the worst crops that were ever developed for human consumption. You get such a tiny amount of consumptive material compared to the amount of water and effort that goes into the production of your average avocado. This is a freaking plum, people. The Europeans figured out how to make plums edible like 5,000 years ago, and it's gotten nothing but better. The Americans put together the Native Americans put together the avocado, and it's just a green snot film that you put on your toast. Okay, you like it, I get it. You're going to pay the tariffs because you like it. So if you want to do that green industry thing that you're talking about, you're going to have to knock off with the freaking avocados. Sorry, but that's like not just rich, but uber wealthy food. The amount of water that stuff takes is absolutely absurd.
I tend to think the Mexico and Canada tariffs are not going to persist long enough to have much of a measurable effect on consumer prices. At least I would hope not, because all Mexico and Canada have to do is improve their behavior a little bit, and Trump will be happy to roll back the tariffs.
This actually goes to something you were saying. Hold on, Jay. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
When you were talking about them trying to stop substances from coming into the U.S., that is not the actual truth. What is actually being done with the tariffs is trying to force them to enforce their own laws to prevent drugs from coming into their country. Because if it never comes into Canada or Mexico, it doesn't have an opportunity to come into America from those sources. And so if they'll merely enforce their own border laws and their own border security, we don't have to enforce our border security the same way that we are currently having to utilize them.
Yeah, Trump is not trying to use these tariffs to make money. It's just the best cudgel he has in order to produce the political result that he's trying to produce.
It may not be an issue with the tariffs because the EOs that Trump signed in have a clause in them that if any country retaliates with their tariffs of their own, we're just going to intensify our own tariffs. The only situation where I think that'll be an issue is with China. And because they already planning, China's already planning on having retaliatory tariffs against us. Sure. Now, whether or not they're going to escalate any further past the first wave, we don't know. But I shudder to think of the idea of another trade war with China. We won the last trade war with China. But the difference is, though, now China has the backing of Russia in the commodities market. They have a lot of raw materials now that they're trading with Russia to help supplement them.
They do, and that has shored them up a little bit, but they are still on a much shakier footing than we are.
They are, and if of course if the United States was to go cold turkey, that's 30% of their GDP that goes out of nowhere because we do a lot of trade with them. However, hurting them also hurts us. So it's not going to be necessarily we hurt them and we win. Because if we were to tariff the hell out of them, our electronics market is going to hurt.
Because we have made the mistake of allowing our two economies to become way the hell more intertwined than we ever should have allowed.
Yes. So, I didn't even talk about DeepSeek either. I didn't even bother getting into that, and the fact that they somehow managed to leapfrog us. Somehow managed to leapfrog us in terms of AI. with cheaper and in more inferior chips. Get that.
Is that really unexpected though? When you stand on the shoulders of giants, the sun is easier to reach.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, with knowledge of current programming and AI, you don't need superior chips to create superior AI.
And for how many decades have we been allowing those guys to come over here and
Guys,
steal everything they can get their hands on?
They were able to make a more efficient AI with outdated NVIDIA chips. Think about that.
Yeah. That should give us all pause.
And of course we have $500 billion that's supposed to be poured into Project Stargate to give us top of the line chips and top of the line chip producing. Something about this does seem fishy. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe everything that China says in regards to DeepSeek. However, if even half of it is true, it's like, well, why are we pouring in this amount of resources into chip making and chip producing when they're able to do it with outdated chips for much cheaper? What are they doing differently that we can't do?
Like I said, standing on the shoulders. When you take completed code and you start with completed code to begin your process, you have the ability of what's it called, databasing that code in a way that lets you write crib code. And crib code allows you to just artificially induce much better performance for a short period without having to put in the actual trial and error, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bear in mind also, if and when China decides to move on Taiwan, they might move on them just to get access to their chip building infrastructure.
Oh, most definitely. That's why it would be a seaborne invasion. That's why they're not going to bomb the hell out of Taiwan. No,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's too valuable. Yep. It's way too valuable, and that's also the reason why we're willing to go to World War III for that. Because the United States, it would take the U.S. a decade to match the infrastructure that Taiwan has right now, which is part of the reason why I'm confused that the U.S. hasn't given Taiwan Semiconductor a sweetheart deal to move all their infrastructure to the U.S.
I know. I'm completely with you on that. I don't understand it either.
Why not? That's the one time that we should give a foreign company a sweetheart deal, because we do not. Do we want to wait 10 years to get that infrastructure? A lot can happen in a decade.
Well, yeah, and it's a thing that is in our own strategic self-interest.
Let's just give them a sweetheart deal.
I mean, we've got our ass hanging out pretty fucking far, and I would rather it not be hanging out that far. Is all I'm saying.
China to grab.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'll tell you right now, if we think it's bad now with China being able to duplicate or replicate Western technology, Western electronics, imagine if they're able to get a hold of 80% of the world's semiconductor market overnight.
Imagine if they made 90% of our antibiotics. Oh, wait, they do.
Ah, well, yeah. It's already bad. Bad enough as it is.
Yeah.
Then they have control of the Taiwan Straits. They have basically pseudo control of the Straits of Malacca. And then if they're able to get a stronger foothold in Panama, in the Panama Canal, my God, you can't allow them to have trade routes. You cannot allow them. And if about it, the way. Go ahead.
If those guys decided to get a wild hair up their ass and really play for keeps, all they would have to do is release a bacterial pathogen bioweapon and cut off our supply of antibiotics. War over. You don't even need to pick up a weapon.
And if you look at the way that China does loans, so we already know that China does very predatory loans. They tend to. However, when China decides to do loans with second and third world countries, what they don't try to export are certain aspects of their culture the way that the U.S. does. Uganda was a great example. We told Uganda, if you don't allow gay rights and protections for people of that community, you're not going to get foreign aid. Uganda said, you can go fuck yourself. You can keep your foreign aid.
All of our foreign aid has pretty much been put on pause, and it has basically collapsed the NGOs of Latin America. All of them.
I understand.
All of a sudden, oh no, what are we going to do? We can't buy votes.
I think the Democrats still don't think there is a causal relationship between the fact that we flew a gay pride flag over our embassy in Kabul in June of 2022, and within 60 days the Taliban had overrun the country and our guys were fleeing for their lives. They don't want to see any cause and effect there. Those are two completely unrelated events. Let's just move on. Talk about poking the bear. I mean, come on.
Because man, a lot of people don't want to bother looking at those correlations. They don't want to bother. No,
They
wanna
just
bother
don't. Yeah.
because there's certain aspects of our culture the rest of the world just doesn't want, and people are just too stupid or too oblivious to recognize that.
Because I am doing the morally virtuous thing, and there is no way that the morally virtuous thing could have unwanted side effects. So I just refuse
know
to
what?
acknowledge any possibility.
Hey, listen. Let's just keep doing what we're doing anyways, and then let's let China take the number one spot. Why not? Let's just keep doing what we're doing. It'll all work out.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it'll all work out somehow, some way.
The important thing is that we feel good about ourselves.
Exactly, and everyone's included. Everyone gets a turn.
Everyone is diverse and inclusive and dead.
And don't forget equitable. They're also very
And
equitable.
equitable, yes.
Exactly.
Diverse, equitable, inclusive, and dead. DIED.
Do I have to include anyone? Because I'm not interested.
Do you have to include? I mean, you don't have to, but it is the equitable thing to do.
Well, I'm good with it.
You
As
want
long
tax
as I don't
breaks.
have to. I mean, if I have to, I mean, I'm just one of those people that telling me what to do is the way to make that not happen. You can't.
You won't get any tax breaks if you don't include everyone, though. That's the only difference. You can choose not to do it, but when tax time comes around, it's not going to be very favorable for you.
Okay, it's just like those avocados, I guess.
I feel bad that we don't have more diverse women of color on this show.
Hey, I really do. I'd like to find me a real hottie baddie. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. I should say that after the
Hottie
show.
baddie.
Should we see if Baghdad Buckwheat's available?
I bet she is. We can probably get her for.
I bet she is. I haven't seen her pop up anywhere yet.
Who the hell is Baghdad Buckwheat? I'm out of the loop on this one.
Karine Jean-Pierre.
Oh, that's Baghdad. Oh my God. Oh Lord.
If you
I didn't know that was
wonder
the
why
name
we
you had
shattered,
for it.
man.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna tell you what, man. I roasted her one time on one of my shows for what she wore to on a random press conference. Dude, she had like a full-on baggy man suit on. Like it was so weird looking. It was like a silver suit with the white chalk stripes and a purple shirt underneath. And I was like, girl, what are you doing? It looked so weird. Like I literally spent like 10 minutes just roasting her for what she wore. It was the weirdest shit ever.
You got any impressions on the new girl? I sure am impressed.
She's definitely opinionated. I will say that.
I cannot believe she is only 27. That seems
27?
impossible. She's 27.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, talent doesn't respect age, bro.
No, I know. It's an incredibly impressive thing. I stand in awe of it.
That's another thing that I've always said, that I like about Trump is he has a tendency of putting the right people in the right jobs. His previous press secretary, McEnany, absolute shark.
Yep.
This one seems to be. This.
I think he picked McEnany mostly for the optics side of that, if I had to guess. But
she sure was good at the job, though.
Yeah.
No,
she had a job
sir.
at Fox News, in fact.
I hear what you're saying, but I absolutely disagree. That woman was a shark. She had the binder of God with her, and if you brought up something in a press conference, she would flip to a page in that binder and speak the words of the God Emperor himself.
All hail God Emperor.
Right?
Hey, look, man, I can't get mad. Listen, I can't get mad at her for using her source material. Have you guys ever seen a press conference from Sabrina Singh, who is I believe she's the Pentagon press secretary? If you haven't seen her, trust me. Like is
she former or current?
Sabrina Singh, she might be former, actually. I mean, I don't know. Has Trump already appointed a new Pentagon press secretary? Because she was.
I feel like he has, but I don't remember who it is.
I don't know who he put in though, but she was a binder queen though for sure. Her and, not Kirby wasn't as bad though, but she was a binder queen. Like the moment somebody threw a curveball at her, she would literally read from her binder.
Yeah, they had to bring in Kirby more and more and more as the as the term wore on. There were certain things where they just didn't want to let Baghdad Buckwheat go out there and try to handle them.
See, see what I'm saying?
Yep, and I think there was. Yeah, I have seen her before. Yeah.
That's Sabrina Singh. Oh, she's deputy secretary. Okay, that's where I had it wrong. Okay. Like she would be able to hold her own here and there, but
Let's hear this
threw a
chick's
curveball
voice.
at her.
Not just the fires, it's the road clearing, it's the management, it's how people get back into their homes. All of this knits together very carefully in an intricate way.
Okay. All right. I find her very annoying.
In an intricate way.
In an intricate way, yes.
Oh man. All right, now let me ask you this: who's more annoying, voice-wise? Would it be Sabrina Singh or KJP, Karine Jean-Pierre?
Jen Psaki.
Jensen.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Lady Ginger McFirebush of Alabaster Farms.
And of course, where did she go to? Of all places, she went to MSNBC. Perfect fit for her.
course.
Because of course she did. Where else is she gonna go? And she got a very nice facelift when she got there. I almost didn't realize it was the same chick.
Yeah, paid for by MSNBC. I would see what after Trump won the election back in November, there was no better post-election coverage than MSNBC. No better coverage could be found in there.
Oh, I know.
Why bother watching Fox News and be bored? No, you want to watch the.
Oh, I know. No, you want to inject that copium directly into your veins.
Of course you do. Oh man, that was extremely satisfying to watch. Extremely satisfying.
Oh, I know. There's almost as much good stuff from this year as there was from 2016. It was.
Since we mentioned DEI earlier, are you guys aware of some of the major companies who have eliminated DEI?
Oh, I know. It's a real bloodbath. I mean,
Walmart, Amazon, McDonald's. What was it? I think no, Costco kept it actually. Costco kept theirs. That's why they had a boycott for Costco.
yeah, and I mean everybody knows who's been listening to the sound of my voice for any length of time that I have been predicting for quite some time that when the culture war ends, it will end more quickly than anybody can possibly envisage, and I think we're seeing that right now.
Is it over though, or do we just have an armistice?
I don't think the fringe radical left will be as culturally ascendant as it has been the last half decade, again within our lifetimes.
I predict good movies.
God, wouldn't it be nice to have good movies?
Oh.
I would kill for good movies.
God, please, man, because I haven't seen a good Marvel movie since 2018.
Imagine if Star Wars didn't suck.
Hold on. Episode 7 was pretty decent. All right, Episode 7 was pretty good. It gave us a lot of hope.
I'm not a huge fan of the medium Star Wars franchises. I do want to say Skeleton Crew was a fun romp. I really enjoyed it. Maybe I should.
I still haven't watched it.
It's
Andor.
worth. Andor. Look, hold on.
Andor.
I kind of dropped the ball on Andor. I'm not gonna lie. I was watching Andor when they just did like this walk down the road with their firearms and they were straight muzzle flashing each other's heads the whole time, and I just couldn't watch it. It gave me hives. I made a short about it and quit watching it that episode, but I'll go back and watch it again because people says it's better than everything else. The Acolyte.
Did they come out with the second season already of Andor?
I don't think there's a second
No,
season.
not yet. Okay. But
Okay.
honestly, it is the grittiest and darkest of all of the Star Wars stories by far. There is no darker story than Andor, but we need that though, because it's when technology is really just is busted, and you see a lot of the poorer sides of the galaxy, and you see how corrupt the Empire really is. Because all you really know about Star Wars from that point is Empire bad, Republic good, Empire bad. You don't really get to see the ins and outs of how the universe works. Go ahead.
I want to respond to Joe Cool. I didn't diss Star Wars. The writers did.
Boom! Mic drop. Sunglasses.
And let's
Exit
hope for-
stage left.
And let's hope for actually good Disney
I don't
movies.
know what you heard about me.
There you go. I'm hoping for actually good Disney movies. I'm hoping for oh, that's my hair. My hair's sticking out. I'm hoping for like sports just being sports and not having to have a political agenda.
Yeah, speaking of things that would be refreshing.
Yeah.
Right? All right.
I'm hoping-
We got 1 minute left. How do we want to do it? Let's give Jay a go first. Jay,
Okay.
tell everybody.
All right, cool guys. Thanks for having me on, of course, for season 2 of the Blast Radius, guys. If you want to see more of the content that I produce and you want to see more of my face, follow me over at Jay's Hot Topics. It's Jay's Hot Topics on the YouTube, Rumble, or the Twitter. I go into a lot of things: geopolitics, U.S. politics, economics, finance, trending topics, sociopolitical politics, sociopolitical topics, and sometimes I get into spicier sides of more fringe politics. I also do some debates here and there, and sometimes I go into a little bit of race realism if I'm feeling like getting super spicy. So I appreciate you guys for having me on the show, and I look forward to the next one next week.
Magnificent. That's always the way to do it. For some reason, my little scroller button ain't working. Hey, Cap, take us
Ladies
out.
and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius. We sure do enjoy spending these 90 glorious minutes with you each Sunday evening. Even next week when it's the Super Bowl, you're not going to watch the fucking Super Bowl. You're going to watch this show instead, because this show is better than a goddamn rigged football game, isn't it? I think it is. Thank you, Jay. Happy birthday, Caucasian Sasquatch. I want everyone to have a lovely, exciting, edifying week this week. See you next week. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
I screwed the pooch. I do apologize. I'm trying to get it right, and everything.
And that guy
wrong.
screwed the pooch.
What did I do? Everything is wrong.
You bent that over. You bent that pooch over, and you screwed him good and hard.
I was trying to
Just
do
like the
multiple.
professor did in Maryland.
I suck at this. I'm just so bad. You should fire me and have a totally different producer. Much love, everybody. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. Redirects will go over to my show where I'm going to get uproariously drunk. Jay, I'll drop the link. I think everybody's got the link. It's pinned
Oh yeah,
on the
I have the email.
much love. Don't let the man get you down. And